Welcome back, everybody. I think we're going to be moving right on directly to question number 4. So question 4 states, question 5, I don't know why I said 4. What are the steps/protocols taken in the feast hall following a funeral? And I know we've discussed a lot of funeral or feast protocols in general, but do I have a volunteer to kind of run down some of the protocols for a funeral feast? Do we have Joel back from his break yet? Would you like to tackle this one?
Some of the protocol?
Yeah, generally just with the following a funeral.
Like I know when you're having a funeral feast, you're usually supposed to be a lot quieter and compared to a headstone feast because there's a table of tears and so you try to be a lot quieter, whereas in the headstone feast you could, you have the enough, which is a big, you bring humor back into the feast there. So there's times where there's humor and then there's times where you're a little bit more quiet. One of the things my grandmother always taught me and my mom was at a funeral you're not supposed to be chewing gum. And yeah, that's just a couple of things that come to mind.
Thank you. Any additions to following a funeral, some of the steps or protocols that we
Yes.
forgot?
I guess I'll just add on to that, and that's kind of like the whole purpose. When we're teaching the kids why are these things happening, sometimes it's to tell them why, the background, and that's one of the things that have helped me learn. But it's a part of the spiritual side as well, and we believe in reincarnation and spirituality, and the spirit is left their body and are beginning to cross over. And I always heard Denham get sing Hegelian, you're walking along the sacred path. And there's a whole process of that happening. And it concludes at the headstone feast. And so that's the whole purpose, is the spiritual side of things. And when the chiefs are at the funeral, especially if it's for a chief that has passed away, all the will have an opportunity to go up to the front of the casket, and they do their lemachoi and lay down their blankets. And the way that I picture it is basically all the chiefs are laying out their blankets for the spirit to cross over into the spirit world to begin that. And it's kind of like the red carpet. All the chiefs are laying out the red carpet. And so that's a big part of our teachings and spirituality. And I always remember what Dan Get said. He said, when somebody was young that passed away, that meant that they had an old spirit and they were sent back to learn more. And I was like, holy smokes, so we're never done learning. Like, it even goes further than from birth to death. It goes into the spiritual side of things, and you're always learning, no matter, I guess, even into the spirit world, you're still learning, so. Could be.
Thank you. I think I can read Marty's comment, which was for earlier, but in a way it kind of adds to this one as well. Marty says that he wasn't able to comment earlier about the differences from then and now, but then there used to be 2 people to go door to door to invite people to come to the feast. Yeah. I heard back in the day it used to be traveling from village to village to do that, the Hawaiian hits, right? And that's why there's that feeding of the messengers and all that. Thank you, Marty. Did we miss anything for protocols or steps in the feast hall following a funeral? Did you think of?
One thing, I don't know if we touched on it, but just a part of the planning for if someone passes away, and then, like, for example, you know, like my brother, we had to have all of the our father clan was the one who did all of the work, and that's something that I feel like it was such the role of my father clan, like my Auntie Joy and my uncles and my Jeeds Esther, my dad, like reflecting on it as an adult, I never realized how much of a presence they had in my life. From a little girl up until now, like for example, my ears were pierced by my auntie. And so like the role of the father clan is really from birth up until death and different milestones that they do to take care of you. That's their role and their responsibility. And so in a part of picking your workers in a funeral feast, those are who the workers are. So it was my dad's brothers and his sister, our cousins in Wolf's Melly, who were our workers because they're our father clan. And just certain protocols, like we as Ganetta, we're not allowed to touch the casket. They're the ones who collect the tissue. Like there's just so many different spiritual responsibilities that they hold as well during the time of grief, especially. And yeah, they're the workers. That's all I wanted to share.
If it's not too much, I feel like that's a good segue to kind of show the differences, or not generally the differences, but the next question is now a fence or a stone settlement. Would you be able to touch on some of the aspects of that compared to a funeral feast?
Sure. Just reflecting on the previous feast that I led along with my Ganetta clan, it required multiple meetings, figuring out like who is going to do the fence, who is going to be transportation of the headstone to my mom's house, because when the headstone comes, it usually would go to where the person lived, but based on my family's decision, it was at my mom's for my brother. And you need to think about who is going to be what I refer to as the traditional MC for the first event of a headstone feast day. So the first event is where we invite all guests to come to the house where the headstone is first placed. Of course, that comes after the headstone viewing. So the headstone viewing, in my case, was in July, and the feast wasn't until September. And when guests come in September, the morning before the feast, all clans except Ganetta are to go up to the headstone and sing their Limerick Oi, which is a spiritual song that helps the spirit cross over to the other side. There'll be comments to the headstone, just stating again, like what Joel was saying, Hagalian, you're telling that spirit, you know, it's okay to cross over now, and we'll be okay, and to go, you know, into the spirit world in the proper way, which is our Giksan way. And the traditional MC has a specific order of guests to call up. So because we were in Gitwangach, it was the Laskik of Gitwangach and the Gitwangach Lachkibu that came up first. And then it went to the Gitniao community and then Kitzigukla, and then to the eastern communities. And once everybody goes up and says their speech or their Limik Oi, then it is time for the Geneta to come up and stand closely to the headstone, and we say our, you know, our final say to the spirit of the headstone, and we sing our Limik Oi, and then that kind of concludes that portion of the day. And then we make an announcement. All clans except for Geneta are going to go to where the rope is to help pull the headstone to the Inskias, to the graveyard. And all of the Geneta walk behind the, is it Inlaitich? Inlaitich, yeah, Inlaitich. So that's the word for headstone. And then once we get to the graveyard, again, we have a worker from the father's side, which was my Auntie Joy. She was there and ready to wipe down the headstone. And because specifically to my brother's headstone, earlier I talked about the ayuks that I purchased, the Mastibbin, the crest of the white seal. Samaget Ruthlangwach Lance was telling me to just kind of give a little brief update on that ayuks because it was on the headstone and we were all using it. Just kind of stating that I purchased it, and later on in the feast hall I'll be sharing the adawak that comes with that. And then just making a final announcement of our feast, and then we transition into the feast hall. And as it was mentioned earlier, the difference is the headstone feast is you have humor in it, and also the humor in it is the Andam Hanak, the roles of the spouses of the host clan. And you see the spouses throughout the day. I don't know if I'm kind of rambling, but if we backtrack a bit to on our walk from the house to the Enskias, to the graveyard, there'll be a person who we had, Nick and Ye, Alfred Heisems. We hired him to be our Neguchtit, which is a person who stands in front of everybody walking, holding the rope, and is just bringing that humor. He's sharing jokes, and then he's just making an announcement of the spouses that are handing out pop or Swedish candy or chips. And again, that's just acknowledging the spouses on our walk of the host clan. And yeah, then the spouses come again in the feast hall with the dancing and a part of the Hawal. And I feel like that's kind of different for me from a funeral settlement feast versus a Bachmagam Law headstone feast.
Thank you. Any additions from in here to the fence and or stone settlement feast?
One thing that I could think of is the workers between the funeral, like you have yourselves, the pallbearers and the night watch and what have you, when the body is in the village and in someone's home. And then transitioning to like a stone settlement, you'll have workers that carry, that are placing the stone and who washes it and whatnot. And that's the one thing that I just learned really is that once you're done the funeral feast and everything's done with transportation, like watching the buttons and whatever, and then you transition to the stone, and then I don't know, like you said, and that's another good point that you made there is that if these last few stone movies that we missed there with Alfred Heisem's and you make a really good point of him explaining what he's doing and why he's calling on to the spouses of the host. I don't know, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, just hit the nail with the hammer, everything from start to finish. And the other thing is that the person that you're doing the work for, they're going to be resting after the stone and the fence has been raised. And there's a word for it. If I could get one of the matriarchs to translate it, it's and you hear it all the time that that individual won't be resting until the work is completed because their feet will be sticking out of the ground.
A word for that, you mean?
There's a word for that, yeah.
Very symbolic to ensure you do the work properly, right? Or there are consequences, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What my brother had mentioned was nemokitsu suset. His or her feet won't be sticking out anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think of that word you were talking about, but that's what we come up with right now.
Mm-hmm.
That was another one when we went to Port Alberni. I liked it. I listened to Donna's speech, and yes, you still have emotions for the loss. He says it's time to move on and, you know, enjoy your life, what you have left of you.
Mm-hmm.
You will never forget that one that had passed on, because she's, like we said earlier, your job is not done on this earth, you're up there learning more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, as we are here, you know, if we're not enjoying our life, we begin to be sad. We don't want to be sad that much because we have enough of that already.
Mm-hmm.
And to just sit back and like we have grandkids that we're going to be helping. It just continues on going. But that's how I remember her sister saying that when we went to their anniversary in Albany.
Mm-hmm. Another thing is for the fence and stone settlement, if it's completing the work for another chief, like I'll use my mom as an example, that when she had passed, I took her name as the successor, as Elist, and in order to get the strength and the dachget, I had to complete the work, and that is raising the headstone and the settlement. And that's where I was where I had my amhalite placed on me, as Jess was saying, that it's hard to find anybody that can carve amhalites anymore. They're either too expensive or they're far few in between. I was fortunate that I was able to find a carver out of our nation, and along with the pelts and the sea lion whiskers. And that's where it was placed on, was a 7-month feast, and it's an emotional but also a happy time. But it's hard to be happy and sad at the same time, like Audrey was saying. We deal with that now. Yeah.
I think another thing to keep in mind is that what was being talked about is comments towards the headstone. Is that I cannot seem to grasp what they are saying here. You always hear them saying Habilian Hamja Gwelx. Is that how it goes?
It's a Gwelx, yes.
And I think it'd be a nice topic to, like I was saying, is that there are some nice resources out there that to help with the language, and it'd be nice to know what you should be saying at a certain event, like a funeral, when you're best escolas oops knee stall or something like that. And that's what Gwelx told me, is that when you're up there and you're laying down the blanket, you make sure that you know whose blanket you're putting down for them. And it'd be nice to know what to say, when, and at what event. And I also remember hearing them talk about walking the trails of going back to the trails or the prairie grounds of our Jesus.
Yeah, you have Bruce Sketchbooks, and that's Don't Look Back.
Yeah.
And your work here is done. And there was another one, Need in Grace from staff, you won the race.
And that's the thing, like when you're talking about the feet being up in the air, is that I remember hearing saying that the spirits are still roaming around up until the headstone's put up for them, and that's when they could go home.
I just want to kind of conclude my thoughts on this too, and my reflection is it just made me really experience, I don't know, because I'm more of a mature adult now and in that leadership type of role within Maganetta, and just there's so much healing and like messy emotions that happened with the funeral, 7-night feast, and then it's like you're in a daze. But then there's a certain amount of time that you have to wait before you put the headstone on, which is typically about a year. And I just feel like all of the steps that we learn is just like a really big cycle. And I didn't expect the headstone day to be very emotional, or the days leading up to it. And it was really emotional and heavy to think about all over again. It's like you're reopening the Band-Aid and the wound is still there. And so just kind of touching on Star's comment about the humor when the spouses are dancing in, and that's something that I've heard, like, it, you know, learning language is good to bring in the humor. And you also see that within our Gitsan traditions of the Anda Hanak Miluk, when they're dancing in the costumes, like that's the role of that we have as spouses or that our spouses have for us is to not only be there for us in the really tough times, but when the time is appropriate, you are there to uplift our spirits and my family's spirits, because we've spent a year of grieving, and now the work is being completed and it's time to be uplifted again. And it's a reminder that it's okay to, you know, carry on and laugh again. And so that's just what I wanted to kind of conclude my thoughts with that question.
Perfect. There's one comment from Sherri that I think I'll read out. Sherri says, I'm currently preparing for my Zeet's headstone feast. There have been no meetings, even though I tried to call 3 before giving up. I have my list of the people who lend me, as well as Waas and Zalim. I am saving for my Hawal. I've collected Lee Will for the workers and guests. I've selected a person to prep the grave for cementing. I have been thinking about how I will perform my nakna. Thank you, Sherri. Maybe that's a perfect segue to question number 7. Maybe Sherri can take a whack at that one. The question itself, Sherri, is do the protocols need to be in particular order? Sorry. Joel just put something in that says, I like Jackie's comments on having a resource of what to Samelgach at different events. I need to leave now. Thanks for all the sharing. Thanks, Joel. Yeah, great comment. And that kind of touches as well too on do the protocols need to be in a certain order. So that question number 6 was a fence or stone settlement, and we just covered that. And I'm hoping that Sherri can touch on do the protocols need to be in particular order, question number 7.
Yes, there's always an order for anything. Like when there's a welcoming, let's say the Gibboos are the hosts, for instance. And, excuse me. But just like how we know who our Gwelx are, we know how there's Gwasla, Willits, Kwabi, Hydrans, and then so on and so forth. And then when we do the welcoming, we call upon our honored guests in a certain order. The hosting plan would call their MC to call out these honored guests. And if it's the Gibbou, the first people we would call up is the Geneda. And then we carry on to the Geneda chiefs, Gilgach chiefs. And that would be the Lachskiks, their Lachgiboos, and then their Lachgenedas. I actually have some papers here that I have from peace protocol, smoke peace protocol, chiefs for love and welcoming, that I would love to share with you all. That has exactly what we're talking about right now. And it's the same for, let's say, Jessica has a welcoming in their community. They have to go by a certain order, and it's always the hosting, the landowners are acknowledged and called up first. Always important. And then we carry on to, like, there's just a list. I'm kind of nervous right now, so if somebody else could jump in.
Thank you, Sherri. I think that's almost self-answering. I think it's Brenton touched on that a little bit earlier, that even though everybody's learning, there are some or a lot of chiefs that know exactly what the orders are and how to acknowledge certain chiefs at certain times to show that respect and to acknowledge the ranking in the right way. Maybe there's something that you want to add to that, or if it was said well enough.
Yeah, no, Sherri had everything right, and she should have finished. Sounded like she had a lot more to share, especially with the papers that she mentioned. And there's always a protocol that needs to be followed, and if you don't follow it almost to a T, you will be corrected. And it's not to offend you, it's to teach you right from wrong, and you'll know what to do, how to do things better the next time. And it's always important, you always start with Univille, and that's very important that you start with Univille. Right from speeches to land acknowledgement to Greek and serving. You always start with your Univille, and then Father Clan and new guests. But it always works out where everybody is served all at the same time. But you always start at the middle first.
Thank you. Anyone in here want to add to that question?
So, to add on to what Brenton was saying, is that even the situation where we're talking about the orders the city get, I don't know what this one was from, but this is I think we were trying to contact the Cindy at your chair if you guys want. Everybody knows who holds these names and everything. Is that being corrected as well? I remember when I went to Gwelx Lab's feast in, I can't remember a few years ago, or I can't remember Robert, the one that Alvin's name was using that. Stimson. It was just myself and a couple others on getting at the table and with Kitchigikla as a guest. And when it came to speeches, is that the host went around and like I understand there's an order of syndicate that they have to go through. I even knew who should have been speaking before us, and that was Vlada. And me being nervous and not knowing what to say, I didn't think to point to the host and be like, I think. But at the same time, I didn't want to make it seem like he didn't know what he was doing. I didn't want to offend. So I grabbed the mic and I did my speech, and after that I looked at the K and all of them, and I should have known, and I should have corrected myself and been like, what, they're the ones that speak before us, and there is an order.
So overall, the order means and shows respect to those in attendance. Very important. In light of the time, I'm going to move on to question number 8.
Sorry, I just have a comment regarding that question before we move on. I know that there are, some really organized and knowledgeable Gwelx within the Gitsan who, have a lot of support and a lot of people to call on to teach them and guide them along the way. But there are some Gwelx that don't really have that and are doing the best that they can. And so I just wanted to reiterate the comment that Tara made earlier this evening on just asking for that patience and understanding. It is such a steep learning curve for people stepping into those roles, and just to be gentle and encouraging for those that are picking up and taking on those responsibilities within their house groups.
Thank you for that. There's definitely different ways to learn and understand this itself is an example right now of modern ways of advancing and learning together, for sure. I want to move on to question number 8. We got about 45 minutes altogether to cover 6 questions. I don't really want to say hurry up, but I think to be able to cover everything, maybe I love hearing all the points, so I'm just going to say let's just keep on going, and I think in general we're covering almost every aspect to some of these questions we even haven't asked yet, so don't change up too much. I love hearing all of the points and views and whatnot, so question number 8. What is Hawaii Hit and what is its purpose? Who would like to tackle this one?
The purpose of the Vitamin Hits is to go to each of the communities, like say for west side of our nation, is to go out and announce the arrangements for the big chief, and to invite them to these arrangements so that they could witness the work that needs to be done. And there's another word for it. Is the correct term burning the blanket? You know the word that Billy always says when we're planning on doing Vitamin Hits? Demulks?
Gwelx.
Gwelx.
And then you say the person's name.
Yeah. Demulks. Gwelx? Is that? No?
The person's name.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, and then they would announce the smoke feast, the celebration of life, the funeral, and the start time of all of the arrangements, along with the lumpoi. And when you go to these communities, the hosting community that is welcoming the messengers, they would feed them whether if it's lunch, breakfast, or supper, depending on the time. And they would be given bulk foods like small bag of sugar or even veggies to help you with your feast soup. McGad, which could be anywhere between $1 to $5 to $20, and then you would repay that at the feast with interest.
And to add to that, question 9, it says, when is it used?
For a hereditary chief, is that had passed on. Also, when there's a stone moving for that hereditary chief.
Is it used for totem pole raising too?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's like a significant event in a significant historical Gigsan event of a chief or a Sigil of Hanak who has passed, or a totem pole raising.
When there's important work to be done, very significant to other nations as well, or clans. Anyone here want to add 8 and 9?
I just want to add to what was shared by Brenton and Jessica. I had the honor and privilege of attending a few Hawaii gets here in Gatineau, and I know that when the messengers arrived, we'd all be gathered in the room, and the host would invite them in, and both, like, depending on which messengers, like the clan of the messengers, then people would be, like the hosts for the community would also share some of their knock-knocks there too. And I know that the late Sindif was a really big part of that, and making sure that people were following protocol and guiding people along on what they need to do and when. And those are some of my fondest memories since moving home, having that opportunity to sit in and witness and learn more about what's involved when messengers are arriving in the community. And you know, it's for those that haven't been to one, I highly recommend that you come out and observe and participate, because it does really bring, you know, the culture into more perspective on, you know, why we do the things that we do and the significance behind it. So I just want to add that.
Perfect. Jackie, do you have anything you want to say to add to that before I read that?
It's just, no, not really. It's just, she covered the knock-knocks and everything. I know I had the opportunity to attend a couple of when, correct me if I'm wrong, Morgan, but I know I attended one in Singapore and I accompanied them because I was going there to listen to what their plans were and walk them around when they're doing their knock-knock. And I think one of theirs, I can't seem to remember what theirs was, but I remember, you know, each household doing so. But I don't know, it's been a while.
Yeah, to add on to what Jackie was saying, there was a couple of parts where I forgot to mention was it's, for me, it's very emotional because it's always somebody that's close to me when I'm going out doing these climb hits. I've been there for my mama, my Auntie Debbie, my mom, Uncle Delbert, and it doesn't get any easier. And like Jackie had mentioned, there's knock-knocks and it's more spiritually, and you're connected with your spiritual side with the knock-knocks. And at the end, there's a light that is gathered by the host, and then they would throw that to whoever's going to be catching that, and whoever does catch that, whether they're maybe elderly, they can't do their knock-knock in return. They would appoint somebody to do it for them, and they would go out and do their knock-knock.
Sherri adds the knock-knock is performed by messengers when visiting each village, also simchala. Also, before the ceremony is done, there is a power ball thrown to the successor. The successor is always traveling with the messengers to each village.
Yeah. And could be anywhere between 3 to 5 people that goes out, depending on who may be available. There's also always a secretary, not all the time, but when we go out, we always bring our secretary to do the ladder mix.
I've seen and heard that there's even a protocol of how to toss that ball of energy to the next successor, not to throw it or to be too aggressive. There's different ways that people have done their dances and stuff like that. But I remember I was told I was I threw it a little too hard. It's very symbolic, and you know, I was pulled aside and taught, you know, thanks for doing that, but next time not so aggressive type of thing. So there's always a teaching to learn, no matter what you're doing.
Can I make one little comment? Just while we're on the topic of Nok Nok, being involved in different cultural events, one thing that I've also observed or experienced as well is having somebody from your father clan be like Lulich. So Lulich is like a babysit, is what it translates to. So if I were to perform my Nok Nok at a Hawaiian hit, I would have, like, sometimes we luck out and my Uncle Albert is there. And so I'd ask him if he could just kind of follow, his role is to follow me around as I'm doing the Nok Nok to my name. And that's a spiritual, an important spiritual responsibility, because it's so, we talk about the power that it has with like the ball, and also the spiritual aspect of us practicing and doing our Nok Nok. And it's so powerful, like it's the role of our father clan to pull us back down into, you know, back into the world after performing a spiritual practice. So I just wanted to mention that.
One thing added was the money given to the messengers do not get paid back at the feast. Before we move on, I think, well, yeah, question 10 does connect to 8 and 9. What do we say to acknowledge the messengers once they're done with their announcements at the Hawaiian Hit? So do you know what do you say to acknowledge them? Is there certain things that need to be said?
I know for us, like we all sit at the table and we all stand up, right? A representative from each Gwelx, and we like call them in. But do we say, like, if I were to call somebody in, would I add Marsden to the end of that?
Not when you're calling anybody in, but that would be to add your ayuks to when you're baptizing.
Okay.
The name. But what was the word that we say when we call them in after they say their message? Dumdan smaget, Gwelx alaist. And then we just acknowledge their announcements, and we send our love and our prayers to them, because it's not only the Gwelx that is grieving, it's also, you know, the family, which is majority of the Gwelx. But there's a lot of Gwelx that are so big that there are so many families that are big in that Gwelx. Yeah, it's just to acknowledge the announcements, and to say that you're going to be there, and you don't even have to. When you do attend these arrangements, it's uplifting. You don't even have to say anything to the grieving family. Just being there is a lot, and you could really feel their strength, their love for you and your family.
Thank you. So, anything else you guys remember you need to say, or a certain way to acknowledge the messengers? You might have covered it.
I feel like we covered it. And like, yeah, we're just like more so following a specific type of protocol based on us as Ganetta, inviting somebody into the hall there. And I think there's just very specific protocols and steps that we follow. And really, you don't like always, I don't know, every time I've shown up to Hawaii Hits, in my personal experience, I've always felt a little bit confused on what to do, but it's just something that is like experiential learning. Every time you go there, you start to learn and remember all of the specific steps and protocol that we do. But for me, I know it's like the messengers come in, they make their announcement, and then they go back out, and then we invite them. And then there's a specific way on how we walk them and things that we say to each messenger as they walk in. And we have someone who's seating them at the head table. And then we go on to the Gigging book and feeding them, and then after that to our knock knocks.
Good. Questions 11 and 12 are asking meanings of words. Question 11, what does geek mean when being seated? Seaters in the house.
When I'm seeing our guests, I was always told to say geek, smoggit, galit, smoggit, Ogoya and smoggit, and I just recently asked that, what does that mean? And it's to come. And then when you take them to their seat, which is always very important, you know where the seating arrangement, because if you don't, you can get into big trouble. And where to the point where you'd have to pay that individual if you seat them in the wrong seat, or somebody's sitting in their seat, you'd have to move them, and that's a lot. And I've seen some feasts where you're seated at a table where you're not even supposed to be seated, but how it's like Junior was saying earlier, how do you correct somebody that should know the protocol, but you also don't want to offend anybody? But to go back to number 11, it's calling your guests to their table and their seat.
So it's like here,
Mm-hmm.
here chief, here geek, because I know galat is like come here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like just a different form, probably more formal, like this is your spot. Who knows what Gwelx means? Gwelx.
Sit tight. No, but patiently. Sit tight.
Sit tight.
That's what I like. Wait patiently and when certain steps are taking too long to conclude, like when people are counting the money and distributing it into envelopes and whatnot. They're always told to go to the lake and see that. Is it that Gwelx or is it that Gwelx? And going back to geek, it is important to know where everybody sits there. And I know like a few times, like it's not nice being moved from one spot to another. And like I said, sometimes how do you correct a person that's hosting or somebody that's been doing it for a long time? And I remember for us at one feast, we were sat in a totally different aisle than where we should have been, and we were moved like probably 2 to 3 times, and it's important to know because for us, I felt embarrassed because we were placed in the wrong spot, and people come up to us and be like, "What are you doing sitting here?" Right? And it's important to know. And I don't know, I'm just.
Thank you very much. I think this might be something that most people might have something to contribute to this question. Number 13 is the final question. And it states, is there anything you haven't seen in the feast hall in a long time? Maybe I'll pick on Sherri to start us off, and then go from there. Something that you haven't seen in the feast hall for a very long time.
Well, I haven't witnessed it myself. Like, I have heard that there was apology feasts, but I can't really say much else about it because I've never experienced an apology feast. I know people have mentioned it when certain people dirty their blankets. That's pretty much all I got to say about that.
Thank you. Cara, are you still on with us? Maybe, yeah, something you haven't seen in a long time in the feast hall?
Yeah, I've seen Starlund's comment about tables being full. We have just seen a lot of empty tables, and I know it's a lot of loss. When I think of the people we've lost, it's overwhelming for everybody. But with that constant loss, it's hard for people to keep up. Like, I don't know how my auntie Loretta does it, but she's said everything almost, and unless we're hosting, I can't on time, mostly with health and kids and everything else, and so yeah, definitely there's some that are fuller than others. And I know a lot of people used to come home more for them too, people who live away, and that's harder and harder for people to do now with the cost of living and things like that. And so it's usually like a really big one that people will actually come home for them, but there's so many people who get names, and unless you live here, and sometimes you have to put money in for people, and that's sort of expected just because you live in the area, but yeah, just more people coming from away to participate, keep their names up.
Thank you. I think Joel said he had to leave already. Maybe we'll go in here now. Jessica?
This is just something that I heard, like Greek, it doesn't mean Dala. Greek is like weasels, right? Or is it, yeah, it's not. Yeah, like it was a fur that was used as a token of appreciation to the guests for coming to witness. And I feel like that's something that I've never seen. I do know one time there was, I think it was when the former religious passed away, and Joel, he spent his whole, I just always want to speak in big sense, I say big sense words, winter, trapping marten. And he skinned the martens and he handed out that to the head chiefs to just kind of bring back and acknowledge that type of history, where, from my understanding, the wealth that we had as Gigsan people came from our Lahiep, things that came from our land, such as Greek, and that was what we would hand out at the local Ligit. And I haven't heard like the knock knock horn since the Mogetsunder has passed, and that's something that I really miss. Seeing that type of spiritual practice be so common and regular by his presence that he had within the Ligit. and how he, like, a lot of our Good Son people right now, you know, they attended a lot, and that was something I always remember about him, was, yeah, good read.
Thank you. Junior, if anything you've noticed or haven't seen in a long time, please tell.
Oh, when I was young.
Sorry, there's two juniors. Go ahead.
Like they were talking about is
Let's see, so good.
like apology feast. I've never seen one before, and I'm not gonna. It just seems like there are some instances where some should be, where some should have been taking place. I'm not gonna say anything about that though. And then in our world, quite a few years ago when I was younger, I don't know, it's just cleansing or something about picking oneself up. We had one. That's it. It's just we see smoke feast, we see the settlement feast, but in some instances we could possibly be doing a cleansing or picking oneself up in apology. And I read, I attended the kids' zone learning feast here. It's really nice to see that it's picking up. And I do hope that they continue on with that. Even then, learning feasts barely see that for the younger generations too, right? I don't know. That's it.
Thank you. Junior. Brenton Jr. Sorry.
I want to say songs. I know each will have their own songs that they could sing, but it's learning them. And I think it was my mom's feast that we were going to do a song, but it was just last minute, and Small Buchenwa wanted to bring it back, but it was because of how late that it was brought to our table that we just didn't find or even make time to learn it and march in as our whole deck and come in with the song and all stand in front and go into the welcome song. Seems like Shame Feast is being tossed on the table a lot tonight on this subject. When Gwelx is called, it's you have to follow through and pay back the will that you offended or that you shamed, that you brought shame to yourself and your will. And I'll use our feast when my mom passed. There was an individual in our feast hall. She was a guest and she involved the Western law, and cops were called and they were brought into our feast hall until a couple of us stopped them at the door and told them that this isn't a place for you to come in, and he turned away and he was okay with that, but that's our parliament. That's where we conduct our business, and that disrupted our business that needed to be done that night. And, you know, there's been no Gwelx called, but we just didn't know how to go about it because it was a very sticky situation. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing. You have anything to add maybe to that topic? You haven't seen in a long time at the feast hall?
The things that are coming to mind have already been brought forward by our other panelists, but I just wanted to reiterate how I really miss hearing and hearing quite more so like the need to be bringing back the territorial boundaries, creating that time and that space to share that within the feast hall and to have that reaffirmed back to you from the other syndicate in attendance. And I'll never ever forget going to a feast here in Gittinyow, and it was a whelp from the Gigantic area, and I'm so glad I, was quite dedicated to participating in a lot of feasts and cultural events since moving home. And I remember it was folks, Gwen and Nick, who were hosting a feast here for a loved one who passed, and she was sharing a dog for their house, but it wasn't just for their house, it included my own whelp in their story, and how close our whelp groups used to be, and how that was captured in their dog, and it was so touching and moving for me because that was the very first time I've ever heard any part of the dog relating to my own whelp, and that really did spark interest for me to do research and to try to become more involved in getting to know where I come from and the history behind where our whelp originates and where our crests come from. And that was a really special moment for me because it really did want me to learn more and be more involved and active. And so I feel like, when you have that sense of belonging, it really does give you that motivation and purpose for not only learning about where you come from and the history behind your whelp, but sharing that within your whelp. And so I'd love to see that incorporated or brought back into the feast hall again, because it really does. I remember looking around, not only listening while she was speaking, but looking around and acknowledging how quiet it was in there, because people wanted to learn, they wanted to know. And I just love to see that happen more often. And then when you guys were talking about the ball of power, I remember not only seeing that at the Holiday Hits, but also within the feast hall. And that was such a long time ago, and I haven't seen it since I was a kid, and I don't know what has changed from then until now, but I remember witnessing that as a kid and just being really captivated and not knowing like the significance of it, but observing and witnessing that had a really big impact too. So those are some things that I've wanted to share.
Thank you. There's a couple things that have been written in the chat. No more longhouses. Another thing, Kitzigukla hosts feasts in Gittinyow and vice versa, makes seating so confusing. Also, homemade gifts that are given out, crochet blankets, quilts, hadak, I think that's how it's spelled. Whose iPad?
Lisa Martin.
Lisa Martin. Thank you. Also, my Yet Joe sang a verse at the end of the feast. I missed that. I think we've touched on a lot of important things today. A lot of it was personal, heartfelt, and I thank you guys for sharing. It's not always easy to talk about certain things, but this is really important. It's so we're here to ensure that our knowledge is passed down in a good way, in the way that it was passed down to us. So I want to acknowledge everyone here for being a part and taking the time to answer these very important questions. So some of the key takeaways I got from this, that there's a lot of English nowadays in the feast hall. There's a lot more youth involved. It seems that we're a little bit more lenient on the amount of noise or kids running around because they do need to hear certain things. But there's also still the importance of respecting certain things. So there are still statements like no kids allowed at this feast, but it's pertaining now to the room in the feast hall, which is also another big takeaway. What if everybody in everybody's house showed up? Like you said earlier, if the Eagle clan wasn't so small at that one feast, there wouldn't have been much room for the guests to have a seat. What we do in those situations. One thing that I liked was Gwelx not generally being gala. It's a form of, or a token of appreciation, and that's a huge takeaway for me, is that there never used to be gala. It used to be our wealth was the land and the knowledge, the songs, the gifts from the land, and now it's taking so much money even to obtain the ability to get something from the land now. It's making it a little bit harder to obtain the knowledge or to get to your harvest grounds, your fishing grounds, and which limits the abilities to hear these legends, to hear these teachings from your elders. It's almost limiting the space and opportunity to allow Gwelxians to keep moving on. This is something that I've been thinking about quite often, and I know it's really, really important to all Gitxsan, Wilps, and the whole Gitxsan nation in general. I'll just start off with my key takeaway, and then I'll leave the floor open for closing remarks and such. But my key takeaway is that back in the day, leadership was taken off the territory, taken away, and said you're not allowed to practice anything of your culture. You're going to be in trouble. Everybody's going to be in trouble if anyone practices anything. Then our leadership took it upon themselves to fight for the rights of our nations, rights to hunt, rights for sustenance, rights, and they won certain things. With the winning of those rights, they ensured that we follow those rights. No one's going to take these rights away from us. So the feasts were allowed again, so practice everything you remember from the feasts. Do that dance, do that song, irregardless. Just get out there and do as much as you can because we're allowed. They can't take that away anymore. But now we're in a stage where we've been practicing for a while our next generations are coming up, and we need to be ensuring that they're being taught the right things, not just to sing a song, but to sing the right song, not just to do a speech, but to do it in our language and to do it in a certain order, to respect it properly. And we might need to do that in unison with, teachings and classes that give us the right order of the chiefs to say it in the speech, when to say the right Somalia in the right time. We're probably at the next stage of teaching and ways to get through to the youth rather than just verbal. I don't know, I can go on for a while, but I'm just saying that things are changing rapidly and we need to support our leadership and not just our old rights, but the decisions we're making now as well, support them just as we did in the past. With that, I will leave the floor open to closing remarks from our panelists. Provide some information later on how you can stay connected as well. So, the floor is open for the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Is there any comments? New ones? No.
I got my hand up, people might not be able to see it, Jim.
Okay, go ahead.
I think first of all, just thank the citizen to the organizers and Jimmy for hosting and doing such a great job moderating, and everyone who contributed. It's just a great learning and really safe space just to talk about these things and to share personal experience and knowledge. And especially for those who have led feasts. I obviously haven't, but Brenton and Bev and Jessica, Sherri, you're doing so much, and just want to acknowledge you and uplift you. And I think we're the first round, Loretta, like we've got the older generations coming up in the next. I just want to ask them a question. It's something that I always bite my tongue about because I don't want to offend anybody, but I've seen some chiefs kind of say that the headstone is a Christian influence. And so I want to ask the knowledge holders, the more knowledgeable generations, about what their opinions are on the Christian influences and how that might have changed things as we try and decolonize. And I know many people are religious, and that's great to do so. But I'm just interested in the protocols and the processes and what's traditional versus what's more Christian influence. And I know that it might be a touchy subject, so if people don't want to, that's okay. But I'm just really interested to learn from people about that, because I've heard some chiefs out in this area in the beginning say that, and some people agree with them. So yeah, just interested to learn more. Thank you all, Citizen.
Thank you, Tara. Yes, yet another topic, hard to discuss, but still need to understand to our best extent. We'll share that question around, and hopefully we can get some answers or some enlightenment to that part. I've heard some Christian influence comments as well on the headstone thing. So I'm curious as well to hear some comments moving forward. Starlund says, I wonder if it would help for local schools to invite as guest speakers teachings of Gitsan's for communities and their teachers who know more about protocols. I think that's being done really, really well, and I think it does need to happen as much as possible, especially in the village communities if they have schools, because I know in Hazelton there's some issues with just Kispiak's Somalia being taught versus Gitnya or Kitwanga dialects. So yeah, I think it's definitely needs to be enforced a little bit more, especially at home. in the hometown dialects, I guess you could say. Floor is open. Any closing remarks before we finish up?
I think just for my end that I'm gonna stop here is that if we're talking about concerns or comments, is that I think it'd be nice to keep in mind, we are talking a lot about line of succession and, you know, it is a little bit, it's hard to understand why in some certain situations people will fight over names, right? And within internal house groups, and we have a line of succession or successors, whatever you call it. People fight over these names, and some people have the very right to do so. And on the other hand, we have an individual who, you know, I don't know, I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes because I'm talking about what I think is that sometimes the line of successor should be followed so that the name lives in the feast hall and in our home area. And it's, like I said earlier, is that we have lives to lead and we may find better opportunities to the east or west or south. But to have these names live in the feast hall and have their dues paid and so that no one forgets about where one comes from, right? It's not just a matter of moving far away and taking these big names. It could just be also, the name may be fought over and you don't even see it when you're like probably 20 minutes away or so. I don't know. I'm not scared to bring up some topics that are, you know, may have a tough conversation. I would just like to say that I enjoy sitting here with you guys tonight, and you guys made a very good point on the teachings that you were taught growing up in Feast Hall, and I do apologize. I'm just talking about, you know, a name should be right then and there in Feast Hall when you have the opportunity to bring it up. It's just a matter of me trying to put it together and make it not sound so blunt or. I'm sorry. But like I said, I enjoyed this and I'm happy to see each and every single individual that has attended. I don't want to take up too much time, and I hope that we can sit down and have further conversations like this.
Looking forward to that. I think that'd be nice. Further convos. Anyone else willing to say something?
I'll go next. I have quite a few takeaways from the conversation that we had, but the biggest thing is a comment like not only about the protocols and the importance of following very strict protocols, but a comment that was made by Jessica about, you know, the times really are changing, and you know, it's so inspiring to see communities taking such a big lead on mentoring and grooming our younger generations at such an early age, and you know how big of a difference that's making on interest and participation and being more involved. I think that's such a really good step forward, and I'm really excited about, you know, the years to come, and you know, I feel really really proud to be sitting here amongst the panelists and being a part of this conversation. Thank you, Steph, for welcoming us and setting things up in a good way for us. It's an honor to be here, not only work here, but to conduct business today. Thank you so much, Scala, for the invitation. It really is a privilege to be here, and just that little bit of background, I was really nervous about participating because I'm like, well, what are we going to be talking about? I don't want to be unprepared, and what can I bring to the table? And I want to thank each and every one of you for setting such a really welcoming environment, where we can just openly talk about these topics and and have these discussions. Jimmy, I want to say you did such a great job in emceeing today, and I really would like to see more events like this taking place. Even if I wasn't a part of the panel, I definitely tune in because there's knowledge and power, and it feels really good being in an environment like this, and to learn. And I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
I want to thank Stella for the invitation. It was an honor to be here to take part and collaborate with the panelists here tonight, with Jackie, Beverly, and Jessica, and those that are online, Tara, Joel, and Sherri. And if we were to write a book on our Ayok and the Tao, it would be a very big book, and great from birth to death, and the protocols, and I see Sherri's comment that mentioned hosting feasts in communities where that wolf isn't from. I just want to make a comment that there was a Laxtik feast that was being hosted in Kisgugla in the early 2000s, and the late Barb Clifton was the lice then, and she got up and spoke. And she didn't stand at her seat, she literally went up to the front of the hall and she said what was on her mind, and she was very loud and very stern with her words, and she said that this feast shouldn't have happened here, it should have happened in Gilgal. And she said that we should have been the head table, we should be sitting where we are. And that's very true, but it's like Jess and Bev said, that things are changing, but we can't also be that accommodating to our watering down the protocols. But it's accommodating for the family, because the majority of them and the clan does live in that community. So that's also understanding. And there's a lot that could have been said more if we had more questions, but the time didn't permit. Again, thank you, Stella and Steph, for allowing us to be and getting out here to be part of this. And if there's ever any other meetings such as this, I would love to be here again. I don't present myself as I know it all, because I don't. I'm still learning as well, and I'm very open to anybody that is willing to pull me aside and teach me right from wrong, or correct anything that I may be doing wrong in and out of the feast hall. And good job, Jimmy, for instant tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenton. Jessica?
Yeah, I too would just like to thank the organizers for inviting all of us to be here. This is something that I learned in university that's called the kitchen table theory, which is where it's exactly what we're doing right now, like-minded, focused on topics, and we're all learning from our own discussions and comments. And I think it's such an enriching space of learning who we are as Gitxsan people. And just also, I feel like the knowledge that I have is, to thank my grandparents and the Flynn speakers. I worked with Audrey for a number of years, learning some Algic and protocols from her, and being a part of the feast hall and everybody who shows up to the feast hall, and how I've witnessed and observed over the years the steps that we need to take. And I thank all of you for not giving up when things may have gotten hard, and continuing to practice that still in 2024, and holding a space for us as learners, like a safe space for us, and teaching us. I built relationships with, even Samagat Resex, and Audrey or Irene, it doesn't matter where I am, which feast I am, I could go up to them and I could ask them a question, and they're so generous with their knowledge for me to speak, or a question around protocol. And so I just thank them, my parents, women speakers, elders, just creating a safe space for us to be Gitxsan and be proud, and that allows all of us to role model that pride to our kids when they see us taking on those roles. What I got from this also is how can we move forward? What can we take from something like this and document it and have it as a resource for learners? Because we all do want to learn. And I know I've been talking with Gary Hill because I created this resource for my cousin Sharon when I asked her to be the traditional MC for my brother. But I also had Samagat Resex beside her because he's very knowledgeable, along with Gitxsan. They're two individuals that I see really are idols to me with their wealth of knowledge and their presence when they're there. And so I want to capture that, and I want to have it as a resource for language, along with audio, but also the certain list of chiefs. And so when I talked to Gary about that, he also shared it can't be just me. We need to have more other wolves involved, because even him, with the amount of knowledge he knows, we talked about mistakes, sometimes that still happens. And so cautiously developing resources for language learning. And just for me personally, as it goes into the different generations of the Gwelx and successions, one thing that I really enjoy learning or just listening to is your guys' memories on going to feasts, or before the Chiefs Farewell wasn't always at the Galjet, it was at the individual's home. So those memories, I really enjoy listening, and your participation of your guys' early memories of being in the feast hall. And then last, I just wanted to touch on corrections. I know that's something that I face as a language learner, and how discouraging it could be. And something Audrey always told me was to say before I'm about to speak, just to give everybody an indication that I'm trying, and I'm going to try to speak right now. And that kind of eased it a little bit for me as I continued to gain comfortability with learning and speaking to fluent speakers. And overall, with being corrected throughout my language learning journey, I've just learned that the corrections, whether they're harsh or not, those corrections come from a place of wanting the best for us, of not moving forward and allowing us to continuously make mistakes. You know, it comes from a place that does lead to a positive growth. And don't give up. Like, I remember we hosted a feast and there was a chief that, you know, we still had business and they moved on to passing on a mic to the first speaker, and the chief was like, no, I'm not gonna speak. You guys have just not done your work. And I remember feeling so intimidated, and I was like trying to hold back my tears because I was so excited to go and, you know, pass along the mic. And sometimes it could be harsh teachings, but those are moments you don't forget. And I really believe everybody's efforts in learning is so important to continue and not give up on that, because that's how we're going to continue to grow and get stronger. And another idea for passing on this knowledge was what we talked about earlier, was like podcasts. It could be an avenue for all of us to explore. And yeah, I just thank you all for the evening, for the delicious food. Good job on the technical parts. Morgan, I've seen you grow so much with working with the Chiefs, and it makes me proud seeing your role and stepping out of your shell and emceeing. Jimmy, you share your knowledge and your feedback to us, and that also shows me the amount of knowledge you have and learned with the work that you do, being out on the land and working with Chiefs. And good be that.
Thank you. I think there's a couple of comments I'm going to read out before I hand it over to Loretta to tell us maybe next steps and maybe have a closing prayer as well. We're about 15 minutes over, but I think we started 15 minutes late, so we're getting really, really good.
We're used to feasts.
So Sherri writes, thank you to the organizers for setting this up and asking me to sit on the panel. It makes me emotional because you look around at us younger generation and we are now our parents/grandparents. Sorry, I did that wrong. And we are now our parents and grandparents prepared us to get this far in our lives in regard to our ayuk. Tara says, I like being included in the younger Sherri and organizers. Sassy says, thank you for the invite. And then Sherri adds, I will share my documents that I have drafted up of the feast protocols, chief's farewells, and diagrams of seating within each community. So that highlights as well the Gwelx kids and being able to pass on what you know to those that need it, and highlighting different ways to pass on that knowledge as well. Thank you, everybody online and Morgan as well for protecting that space and making sure that nobody was missed in that regard. Maybe if you have any closing remarks, Morgan, before I hand it over to Loretta.
I'd just like to say thank you to Loretta for including me in tonight. It's been really good. I welcome any times where I can learn and just get more knowledge of our culture. I did grow up and learn a lot of things with my seats, but being young and not really into our cultures, I was. I missed out on a lot, so I really regret some of those things, but I welcome any teachings and any knowledge, and I really appreciate being involved in this tonight, and I look forward to any other sessions that I can attend. So thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I'll hand it over to Scott to let us know what our next steps are in this great venture, and maybe closing remarks along with closing prayer as well.
First of all, on behalf of our language team, I wanted to commend everybody who was able to come out here tonight. Also Jimmy, job well done, along with Ravyn. Thank you so much, Ravyn, for doing this for us. And our little Zoom recorder there for audio. And I also wanted to touch on Tara, her question on the Christianity. So in general, I wanted to share that I remember one of the Satmagit touched briefly about that, and what he said was he looks at our ayok, our agauk, and he said that he notices that quite a bit of it does come. It's similar to the Bible, is what he said, and that this was years ago, and I still remember that. I was amazed of when he brought that forward. And for tomorrow, we will be doing another session, pretty much similar to this one. And the questions will be the same, and we will get different opinions. And this would be from our generation. I called it our generation because that's my generation. The two beautiful ladies here will be our panelists. Excuse me. And that will be for tomorrow, same time. And I will forward tomorrow's Zoom link for tomorrow. There's a separate one. And I also want to thank Morgan for getting these Zoom links out for us. I did share with Morgan when I asked her if she could, because I'm no tech to get these Zoom links out, and then earlier this afternoon I was able to gain more knowledge, a bit of knowledge regarding Zoom and all the technologies out there with Ginny and Chastity. And so I really thank them for putting my mind at ease. And I wanted to say thank you again to our panelists. And yeah. That's it. Repeat. Oh, yes, Nissa. Ja, gewoon. Nee, en ik get echt die wil haak en hier nog op een schat is het. Oké.
Lösa ammasen kaada. Näin älgähti lehmäsi ahton käy heipalse. I hokehkoille lipuse. Nedimsen seetiksen kuulese. Saamsuisse. Mä ajattelin, mitä tapas on, kun vetit, niin vetit. Mä ajattelin, äätykset talensi. Hokehkoissa. Kaaktan. Tegema tarhna. Waxaan ketkum luulit en ga. Wat is een dag nee aan achter. En het is nee kan dan kennen. De mitaai gewoon. Alleen is het alleen met goed. Nee dan meteen dit me gegeven sa. Nee niet. Litten den klawadet, den wildet. Ni willet lach zoon. Och det sen då jag som en vaskars om godes det namn är achton. Nej, den kan inte vi kan gick jag ätiklar kunna till boksläktet plus den badet. Amen.